You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that.
It's time to talk about it.
Pull up a chair and take a seat.
We're serving up recipes for life.
With Hampton University's Dr. Richard Mason and Dr. Tamara Williams.
Welcome to the Sunday Brunch.
This is Dr. Tamara Williams.
And this is Dr. Richard Mason, and welcome back to the table for another edition of Sunday Brunch with the Good Doctors.
The good doctors.
Hey, so how's it been this week for you?
It's been a great week, bro. Last week we checked in and I said it was a week. Did that count? But it's been a good week this week. It went by so quickly. Our weeks are starting to fly by.
Listen, days are happening and days are turning into night much faster than normal, in my opinion.
Much faster than they used to. Much
And I
faster.
tell you, you look up, all of a sudden now you're right here at October. Pretty soon you're gonna be at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you're gonna start right back over again. I swear, it feels like we were just in January.
We were. And that is how fast life moves, and that's why it's so important for us to continue to have these moments to memorialize what is happening in life, but also just to help people remain mindful that you have to stay present, because the present is moving real fast and it's already history before you even know it.
Exactly, exactly. I tell you, I was having a conversation with someone the other day and just talking about how fast things are moving, and unfortunately we're losing people.
Mhm.
People are passing away and all, and so just hug on your loved ones just a little tighter sometimes,
Mhm.
because you just never know when it's going to be, that last time.
And it's not promised. It's not promised. And death
Mm-mm-mm.
seems to not be discriminatory in that everybody and anybody is checking out these days. Everybody and everybody.
Exactly. Exactly. Oftentimes we think it's someone who is seasoned, as they say, or is has been sick or something like that or whatever. But I remember years ago, when I was a little kid, things that I didn't understand then that my grandfather would say, but my grandfather would always say it's not always the leaning tree that falls. And I get it now, as I've reached that matured age. I'm starting to understand some of those wise sayings, should I say? I'm not gonna say
I
those
like
old
the way
folks.
you put that. I like the way you put that, mature age. As you reach your mature age, we're steady maturing, we're steady learning, we're steady growing and adjusting to all these changes. And as we continue to mature, we definitely meet some new challenges and some new changes. So
Listen, every day some new snap, crackles, and pops. I'm gonna tell you, because
indeed. Look, and that is not even today's conversation. That is not even what we came to talk about today at the table. But we can talk all the time. It doesn't take much for us to get a conversation going. I want
exactly.
us to take some time today and hop back into our school system. I have a great guest for us today who does work in the school system and does some restorative practices. She helps to get people to the better side after they've had some struggles and some concerns. And so I'm excited to have her at the table so that she can share with us how she became a restorative counselor initially and then moved into even bigger aspects in directing those things. And so I want to welcome to the table for the first time and probably not the last time, Miss Sharon Radford.
Yes,
Thank
welcome
you.
to the table. Yes, welcome to the table.
Thank you all for having me at this table. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor. And you all, I love all the sayings that you done had, Dr. Mason. Definitely, I'm going to have to tuck some of those away for later. I like a cute T-shirt. So
Exactly. There you go.
So absolutely. So thank you again for having me. And yes, restorative practices. I am excited about talking about it, as well as sharing my experiences with it. So again, thank you all for having me today at this table.
Tell us what
Thank you.
restorative practices are.
So I'm going to give you the initial definition of restorative practices and then walk you into the implementation of it. So restorative practices is an approach that helps people to strengthen relationships, build community, and prevent conflict. When things go wrong, restorative communities work together to try to repair the harm caused and collaboratively find ways to make things right. That is the actual definition of restorative practices and what it entails. So I would like to break down how that works. So the first portion of that is it is an approach, right? So which means it has to be to the individual, and no one thing is going to help everybody, right? So you want to make sure that you're taking the time that comes with building relationships, that comes with respecting one another, that comes with constantly taking the responsibility of whatever negative action that you have put into that situation. So we want to make sure when doing that, that's how we start to build and strengthen those relationships between the two people or even those that are in our community. So yes, I work in the school system, but as I talk about restorative practices, it's not, I started off as a counselor, but then I started using this even in my household. So that's how deep it is. And that's how deep I'm in when it
That
comes
means
to
it's good
restorative.
stuff. That's
Yes,
good
it
stuff.
is. It really is. And then you're talking about building community. Your household is a community. What happens it starts in your house, which
Hmm.
then trickles out into the neighborhood. So I feel like you can take the time to build those relationships and strengthen those relationships within build our community. And then the best thing is once we are on one page, we have the rapport happening and we respect one another and we know we can take responsibility for our actions, it starts to prevent that conflict. Not saying we're not going to have a disagreement. That's going to happen. But how do we solve that? So with restorative practices, it teaches us those social emotional learning skills as well, which is relationship skills, social awareness, self-awareness, right? Responsible decision making. So it is overall, it's an umbrella, and under that comes those social emotional learning skills that comes with it. But the biggest thing is that we have to build restorative communities in order for this to work. So again, yes, I work in the school system, but we need everybody on board when it comes to implementing these practices.
So when you're saying building these restorative communities, you're talking about all the people that will be surrounding these kids that will be on the same page of trying to help them make these changes.
Absolutely. So when we were growing up, it was the village, right? So
Yeah.
Hmm.
yes, the village. It takes a village to raise a child, and it's still the same standard, but it's also in implementing restorative practices. It's also about the language that we're using. That language starts to build agency. It starts to build capacity. So we try to. I make sure that I'm up in lingo and slang and things of that sort. So
Hmm.
community sound a lot different than village, right? And
You
village
know
got
what?
people that
Language
old.
does matter. Language
Yeah.
Yeah.
does matter.
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
It's the biggest piece to this work. And it's
Hmm.
ongoing. It's not one thing that's going to change it. People tell me I have pixie dust in my pocket, I have a wand and I can wave it and they're gonna act right. That is none of those things. It's about the
None
Hmm.
fact
of
that I'm pouring in and I'm making an investment so that I can get something out of it.
And it's about being intentional,
Oh
and
yes.
that's the piece. Listening and knowing just a little bit about restorative practices and all or whatever. I was so glad when the language changed from restorative justice to restorative practices. Because that was a big thing initially. And I know one of the things we tried to get away from as we started looking at more social emotional learning, more trauma informed care communities, the
Mhm.
mindset was to get away from things that sounded punitive because
and
we want
criminal
people to,
because
right, exactly. We want people to understand that we're going to manage and deal with those things so that you can understand and process what happened to you versus dealing with, why are you acting a certain way, so to speak. And so that was good to see that particular piece change. But the biggest part of it is, like you said, is establishing a sense of community, but also whereas everyone is now on the same page, is speaking the same language,
Yes.
and that makes a big difference because then kids, of course, feel like you actually care because they understand what it is
Mhm.
you're trying to say to them.
and
Absolutely.
it's consistent if everybody is speaking the same language. It's consistent.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
And
Hmm.
So when you're talking about restorative, meaning that something was perhaps missing or something went awry there, and so you're
Yes.
trying to fix a situation or assert more positivity into a situation. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we like to talk about repairing the harm that was done and then making sure, and particularly with schools, is reintegrating those students back into that classroom. And how the idea of restorative practices came about years ago, where we wanted to move away from the idea of just that isolation because you chose a negative behavior, and we didn't want kids to just think of it, and even adults to think of, oh, like that punitive piece. So the one thing that we talk about is, hey, let's move away from the idea of putting you in isolation, and this just giving you work, but never processing with you what happened. How did we get there? What was the triggers that got you to that place? It had you feeling that way. But more importantly, what harm was done to those that were around you? Who was affected by this? And how do we make it right? So that's how we start to build that community for one another. And then I know Dr. Mason mentioned that being intentional, but it's huge, that intent versus impact. You want to make
Mhm.
sure that your intentions have to be good, and especially when using that language, so you make the right impact. We all have intentions, we all make an impact, but one of the things I challenge people and say, hey, what is the impact? Is it good, bad, or indifferent? Once we make that decision to have an interaction with another person.
And I like the part of what you're saying, restorative, because you're saying you're now helping them to identify where their behavior went awry, where it went wrong, so that they cannot do that the next time or be able to process a little bit quicker or faster, make better decisions because you're going back to what is happening. And then also restorative in the sense of what happened to the other people involved and how you,
Yes.
you said how do you make that right, so
Yeah.
that's also improving that relationship and increasing the communication between the person that they actually wronged.
Absolutely. Because one thing I've learned in doing this work, and I have a mental health background, so understanding that there are a few things that we have to teach other humans, and that is how to have relationship skills, how to love, and then also how to apologize. There's an art to that.
Go back to that one, go back, how to what?
How to apologize. That is a skill. That is learning. I know this is an age and a generation where it's all about, let me say freedom of speech. I want to say what I want to say. And that's understandable. Yes. And one thing I tell people all the time is that your voice is valid. Your feelings are valid. Your point of view is valid because they belong to you. However, we have to be able to express that so someone else can receive it. So when you're implementing restorative practices, again, that's having that, building that relationship, making sure you're repairing the harm that was done. But we also have to teach people how to advocate for themselves, the proper language. We keep going back to language because language is that
It
agency.
matters.
Language can change a whole situation just because you have the right things to say in that moment and advocating for yourself and speaking on your behalf. There's a huge difference. Then that way you have the audience you need, and then also again repairing that harm that was done. Because if both of us are arguing, and we're all three of us at this table, although you and me are going back and forth, and we can say some things, but Dr. Mason is a part of our situation because he has to sit in that. So you and I not only have to get it right, but we also have to make sure we get it right with him too, and that he sees that we get it right. It's the same thing in our households. It's the same thing in our communities. It's the same thing in our schools, in the classrooms. All of it has to operate so that then what happens is, and now people feel empowered. They feel empowered to learn. They feel empowered to want to be a part. And then they also feel they're heard, and then they also feel they're belonging there. We all want a place to belong, right? This is a great way to start to build to that place.
And I hear you building the emotional intelligence of the individual because
Absolutely.
you're teaching them how to also have then self-control
Absolutely.
and to monitor that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because when you're implementing restorative practices, it's a proactive approach. It's 80% proactive, 20% reactive, right? So we have to get to that preventative piece. And teaching social emotional skills allows us to have that preventative piece built up. So if I know the necessary skills that I can reach into my bucket and get when I get into a situation or I get into a conversation, now I've built the capacity to do so. So now I can self-regulate. Now I can self-govern. And then now I know how to really tap into and explain my emotions and where it's coming from. So we want to make sure that the person is feeling that as well.
The
And s-
restorative counselors, do they work in conjunction with the actual school counselors?
Yes, that is a
Mhm.
huge part of the work. And that's why, again, going back to that restorative community and that collaborative work, when things go wrong, we want to make sure that they're on the same playing field, that we're, again, speaking the same language. So the school counselors, as well as the restorative counselors, they work this teamwork. I'm a former athlete. So to me, teamwork makes the dream work. There's nothing that you can do all by yourself and just be completely successful. I believe you have to have the right team around you, including if you play golf, right? You got to have a good caddy to choose your to be able to choose,
And to retrieve those
the right.
balls.
That I mean, you got to have the right one to be able to
Mhm.
give you the right club. Because if not, that can
Yeah.
lose you a game, you know. So you need the right people around you. So yes, school counselors and restorative counselors work hand in hand.
That is
How do you
awesome.
identify them as far as the students who would be a good look? Because I hear you talking about preventative care. So
Yes,
preventative means before you're actually in trouble sometimes too. So
absolutely.
how are you identifying the students that may benefit from the program?
So the beautiful thing about the restorative practices is it's not a one person, it's not one place, it's not a program. It is truly a student support. It's a truly a staff support, a adult support, parent support. It's a support system, and those restorative counselors, just as the school counselors, are put in place for that. So that's what I absolutely loved and fell in love with when given the opportunity to become a restorative counselor. I wasn't locked into just, especially from coming from the mental health background, I wasn't locked in just a case load. I'm able to
Mhm.
interact with all the students. So a lot of, my personal preventative work, and which my restorative counselors does as well, is where are you placed when someone walks into your building? Where are you placed? And people gonna remember what they're gonna forget what you said, they're gonna forget what you did, but they never forget how you made them feel, right? So I am all about just where you are in life. What is your position? It's no different than when you welcome somebody in your house. Do you just leave the door unlocked and yell from the other room, come in? Or are you going to the door and you're opening it and you're saying, hey, welcome? Because that interaction in itself can tell you a lot. All behaviors communicate something. So restorative practices is getting to the foundation of that. And that starts with a simple interaction between you and that student or you and that parent. And restorative practices is not just for kids. It is for all people. It is for adults. It is for parents. I'm a firm believer that the practices itself and the interventions and the tools can work across the board.
Well, the
You
plus
have me
is
sold.
right, but the plus is you're giving the parents tools. And see, oftentimes
Oh,
I think because sometimes parents get into parenting the way that they were parented, not realizing that that can be problematic in and of itself, you know.
oh yeah.
So yeah, so giving them some tools in their bucket list that they can now learn how to communicate with their kid and from an understanding, because even in the same home, I always tell parents you can't parent your children the exact same, you know. Parenting should not necessarily be about equality, but more so about equity. And what I mean by that is each kid is going to need something different, you know. But
Yes.
the reality is you're able to give each kid what it is that they need at that moment in time. And when you talk about being able to give them these types of tools for their toolkit, then they can be better parents. Then it creates a better sense of community, you know, because early on in the conversation, the first thing you said is this extends to home, even your own home. You know, you've developed some of these practices and you're using them in your own home. And so it makes a big difference. You know, when we equip our parents, the sky's the limit for our kids.
Oh yes, sir. Absolutely. And that's the goal, because we know COVID came in and did its thing.
But we're
Yes, it
not gonna
did.
talk about
Yes, it
COVID.
did.
And
Yes, it
COVID
did.
came and did its thing. And I think the worst words that we used the entire time throughout that was social distancing, because what it did was it really made everybody disconnect. So now what the restorative practice is, it gets us to a place where now we're able to help everybody reconnect by rebuilding, by having those respectful conversations and those relationships and those rapport, which then empowered them, right? So our parents need that energy. They need that battery too. They need that cup to be refilled so that they can get through. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Mason. And no matter how many kids, and even you got both parents in the house, they just all different. They all require something different. So with these tools,
Even if they're twins.
even if
Right.
understood. And you're absolutely right. And they just need something different. But the biggest thing is it comes down to that belonging piece. And do you
Mhm.
see me? And how do you see me? Whether it's our children, whether it's our parents, a lot of the times our parents start to back up because they might feel like they're seen a certain type of way or a certain kind of parent. You might look at, they might feel like, oh, well, they see me as this parent because my child is having these type of behaviors in the community or in school, and then it has them backing up. But again, when they can build their capacity, they have a better understanding of social emotional learning skills. And now we're having that preventative conversation, and that preventative conversation is only after maybe one or two negative behaviors your child has displayed. Now we're working as a community. Now we're talking the same language to that student. So now they don't only hear it from me, Mrs. Radford, but now they can go home and hear it from mom. And even I've seen such a tremendous difference with putting a kid in front of a staff member and their parent, and they see that they agree. It changes the game big time. It changes the game big time for us. But all of that is definitely taking the steps. And some of those are formal ways of restorative practice, and some of them are informal ways of restorative practices. But it is an ongoing continuum. And it's the word practice is right there. It's not a fix all, right? When you're practicing, you're preparing yourself, right? You putting things in your toolbox so that you have something to go up against whatever changes at that moment.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell us, Miss Radford, do tell us how you even got into restorative practices.
Oh, so COVID happened.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, someone told me that I was the reason that COVID happened because of my prayer. So, at the time I was pregnant, and after I had my baby in February 2020, and we shut down March 2020. And at the time, I worked for Hampton Newport News Community Services Board, and I
Mhm.
worked with them. I worked in the school with the TDT program. And at the time, because of all the changes and we couldn't provide services the way we did, so here I am on maternity leave, and I got a call that they were shutting the program down, and that was the end. So they didn't really have anything else, nowhere else to go. But someone sent me a text message with the description of a restorative counselor job,
Mhm.
and that's how I got into it. And when I got there, going back to what Dr. Mason said earlier with restorative justice, the person was there that was before me had restorative justice plastered everywhere. And
Oh,
I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I didn't sign up to be the jury, judge, and executioner.
Right.
I was like,
Mhm.
this is school. I don't want to do that. I said this. So I had to go back and reread the job description and make sure I signed up for the right thing.
Mhm.
And then I ordered some more books and read some more. And then I got really immersed in it and understood that, wow, this is something that can change the game for, especially coming from the mental health side. And you're dealing with parents who, making sure that their insurance is intact so their student can get. And this approach,
Mhm.
I felt like truly was God sent to me so that I can help the masses in reference to students, and it not be with a referral, and it not be with the long drawn out paperwork, or if the parent can get them to the appointment. So I walked in there, and once I saw that, I was like, okay, all this has to come down. And
Mhm.
then from there, I just made it a space where students could reflect, where students felt safe, they belonged, and they felt heard, and then also making it a teaching space. choice. My original passion was to become a teacher, but then I was like, I don't really want to be locked in like that in the classroom. But in the end, it still allowed me to be able to teach students life skills,
Mhm.
coming from the background that I did, as well with mental health. I've had the opportunity to teach in student SDV over at TCC. So I just wanted to be able to put all those aspects into what I was doing as a restorative counselor. And I was able to. I was at the same school for 4 years under great leadership. So that's how.
I
Mhm.
can imagine how great that felt too, to take those things off the wall. And more importantly, for the students who have been involved in that program, what that meant for them to see that type of
Mhm.
change, because
Mhm.
adjectives are everything. And so you were literally ripping off a destructive word to them. And I can imagine what that was like to even come into that building and make those type
Mhm.
of changes.
Absolutely, because the other baseline is one of I use the acronym GRACE,
Mhm.
because in order to do this work, you have to have grace, right? Because harm is going to be done, but how do you handle it? How do you get back to that place where you once was? And a part of that GRACE acronym, it is growth mindset, right? In order to do this work, we have to have growth mindset. We have to think beyond what we feel we know. We have to think beyond what we think we know. Yes,
Mhm.
we've read books. Yes, we have degrees. Yes, we have experiences. But it's about taking the time to listen, to actually hear what that person is saying, and help grow your mind. I believe every situation, every student is there's not a problem. It's an opportunity for me to learn and for them to learn. And if we,
Repeat that. Hold on one second.
Right,
Repeat that one more
right.
time, because that I don't want to just gloss over that. That was very powerful, and I think a lot of educators could appreciate that. So one more time.
Mhm.
absolutely, I do not look at you as a problem. I look at you as an opportunity for me to learn and for you to learn, and for both of us to grow. That's what this work is about.
That
Exactly.
is the process. That's the restoration right
Exactly.
there. Hmm.
Yeah, and I had a mouthful of food at the time, but I'm gonna tell you, when I heard that, I was like, yes, that's exactly
Yes.
what it's all about. And when you're doing that kind of work, first and foremost, I appreciate the hard work because I can hear it in you and I can hear that passion in you.
Hmm.
And what you're doing, you're creating inclusive communities, and that's the piece. And this type of work transitioning from that whole justice piece is basically saying you've been in trouble, so we're going to do something to change that, versus hey, this is something for everyone. All students can benefit from these types of the teachings and stuff like that or whatever, and it's not based on whether or not you've been referred or anything like that or whatever. And so that makes a huge difference. Kids aren't necessarily being singled out for just behavioral problems, because guess what, at some point everyone has some type of behavior problem. Is whether or not you've gotten caught. That's it.
Depend on what day. It depend on what day.
That's
It depends on
that's
what
it.
day.
That's it. And that's the part, that inclusive piece. And I always speak to even those students who walk into the building and you might never hear them having a negative interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge them. Let them know that you appreciate them. That's building community. That's building,
Mm-hmm.
that's empowerment through engagement in itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's making sure the
Yes.
student understand that they know that they belong and this is a place for them, and we appreciate them coming in and following
With
the
a
rules
positive attitude.
with a positive
Right.
attitude. And sometimes that'll be the first time a kid ever hear that they're their leader, or that you're
Right.
your model amongst your peers. And now
Mm-hmm.
it makes them curious. I My thing is, ask thought-provoking questions and make
Mm-hmm.
thought-provoking statements to get our students to a place where they can
Mm-hmm.
now critical think, right?
Exactly.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that
Absolutely.
makes a big difference. And the inclusive piece, often certain positions are seen as a negative. If you know the principal, then you were a kid who might have been in trouble often or something like that. And I remember probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, my wife and I were out eating. And my wife is a former high school principal, and it was really interesting because the student made the comment to my wife that he knew who she was. She was his former principal because he had graduated and all or whatever. And he says, I was never in trouble. He said, I was a good kid. He said, but I felt special because you knew who I was, and you were able to speak to me. She came to um some of their games and stuff like that or whatever. They can play baseball. And so, she made her rounds to different things. And it was that inclusivity and not necessarily just because you're getting in trouble. I know who you are and so on and so forth or whatever. Kids need that. And so having this kind of mindset makes a big difference in their success and how they are able to connect with the schools.
Absolutely.
And if you're reaching out to them and you're seeing and you're speaking to them in the morning and they
Mhm.
have great behavior, that allows you to also notice when they're not having a great day. So that's when you can
Mm-hmm.
jump in and say, I noticed that you're different today than you
Mm-hmm.
normally are. You usually come in with a big smile today. I'm not seeing that smile today.
There you go.
It allows you to allow them to be seen and help them put words to those emotions, because I see a lot of times people are acting or behaving or responding to situations. It could be because they don't have the vocabulary sometimes to really
Mm-hmm.
express themselves or to
Mm-hmm.
know how to label that. But helping you every day, coming in and seeing them and saying and noticing their different emotional states, that helps them to verbalize that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing we do, we have to teach them those words. Again, that goes back to that teaching them how to advocate those and teaching SEL skills, right? So now once you learn the verbiage, you can now advocate for yourself. And going back to that was a very good example you gave. But it speaks to that preventative work. Now I can notice because I see you every day. I interact with you. I say hello, how you doing, right? And then also speaking to what you mentioned as well, Dr. Mason, where you mentioned that kids say, "Oh, I was a good kid or a bad kid." So because of the work I was given as a restorative counselor, I was labeled. Kids would always say, "Am I a good kid or a bad kid, Miss Radford?" And again, language, I would always tell them, "There's no such thing as a good or bad kid. There are children
Mm-hmm.
who make good and bad decisions." And if you think
Hmm.
that you made more bad decisions than your peers, then we can fix that. But if they
Mm-hmm.
don't ever hear that, if you don't take them on, again, it's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to teach. It's an opportunity to give a life skill. It's an opportunity to tell them something good about themselves. Just like if
Mm-hmm.
I can tell a young lady that she is inappropriate dressed, when she's fully covered, I need to commend her when she is fully covered. And I say, girl, you look cute, all covered up. Right? and
It's a positive reinforcement, and
right.
it does make a difference, and people tend to repeat the behaviors that they see
Yeah,
reinforced positively, that they
absolutely.
see
Mm-hmm.
rewarded. If we see, and
Mm-hmm.
that praise is definitely a form of reward. So it's more
Mm-hmm.
likely that they'll want to do that again to get your attention again, because
Mm-hmm.
you're acknowledging that you did something right. And a lot of kids only hear from adults when they do stuff wrong. So I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine how corrective that is, just even.
Absolutely. And that goes back to our language, right? Language is huge, whether it's in reference to how a student is dressing or even how a parent comes in irate and carrying on. It's my language, it's my tone. Even if I know they're upset because their student was suspended or so on and so forth, it's how I say it to them. It's what I say, it's the words that I use to let
Mm-hmm.
them know, hey, this is what's going on. They all respond differently. And I know I was labeled as, oh, the kids just like coming to you because you have a party in your room. And I said, I've never
Tell them
had
haters, haters.
I've never
Right.
had a party, but what I realize is in restorative practices, no matter who the person is, when you're truly invested and you take the time, what gets time and attention and love, you actually see, you get a return on that investment.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
can honestly say, with all the students I work with, I got a return on my investment with them because I had the time to sit and talk and listen and help individually. And this, even as parents, I have a middle schooler and a kindergartner. And yes, they both
Oh,
look like
that's a big gap.
it is. Again,
Mm-hmm.
so having even those two going back to being in the house and the things that we can do with them, I don't just ask my kids how their day was. It's okay even
Mm-hmm.
if it's, hey, it was good. Okay, what part of the day was good? Now it's getting them to a place where they can learn to be descriptive in their words. They can learn to express themselves. They can hold a conversation and it not
Mm-hmm.
feel intimidating, or it doesn't. And it's the same thing when I talk to kids that I work with. And to, like you just said, now I done commended you on something good. You come running to me now to tell me because now you know that I'm willing to celebrate you. A lot of our students and our parents, what they all all humans want to know
Mm-hmm.
that they did a good job. And with this work, that puts us in a place where as we change our language, it doesn't always have to be a formal sit down, full out counseling service, but it can be those informal things to say, hey, I see you, good job.
Mm-hmm.
Even with teachers. I know the teachers who
Especially
show
with teachers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I make an extra effort to go to that classroom, right? I know admin got a long list of things. I go to that classroom, and that's the thing. It's not a person or a place. It's something we all can do. Colleagues, just hey, check on that person. How are you doing? How's things going? And talk about
Mm-hmm.
something good besides just work. That's what this work
Mhm.
is. It's empowering people. It's making sure they understand that they're
Mm-hmm.
seen. And then we also teach them life skills while we go along, right? Because life happens. But how do we
Right.
handle the things that are
Mm-hmm.
happening? It's because it's not happening to us. It's happening around us. It's
Mm-hmm.
happening, in front of us. But how do we handle those things? And
And
I
the
think
kids
we're great.
notice that. The
Oh
kids
yes.
notice that, and they notice
Mm-hmm.
how you hop over your hurdles. And I like
Right.
that you go and visit the teachers because you need the teachers to have a buy-in. And so when
Absolutely.
you're going and jumping in and
Mm-hmm.
participating with their students and noticing the things that they're doing, it makes them willing to work with you a lot more. I used to be a
Mm-hmm.
school psychologist, and I just remember going to the teachers and wanting to see the students that they wanted to label so quickly so that I
Mhm.
could help them understand that it's not necessarily a label that's necessary. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
just a small adjustment, and they don't need this service, or sometimes you just got to understand them a little bit better. But the teachers, when you're actually showing up for them, when it's not something wrong, even when it's just right, that helps.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And empowering them, sharing with the teachers, because I know sometimes there are teachers sometimes who often feel this type of work is counseling, and they can, sometimes say, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I'm not
You want me to
trained.
do one more thing?
Oh.
Exactly. And it's
Woo.
really about being kind and really learning about your students. That's it. But here's the gotcha: when they realize and recognize that some of these practices affect them, because their lives don't change just because they walk into a building and expected or ready to teach. Guess
Mhm.
what? They may have just left home where their kid decided that he wasn't going to eat his breakfast and he was going to be late and didn't iron his clothes and missed the bus, and now they got to drive a kid to school, and now they got to get to work, and they're going to be late to work, and now they realize, guess what, I left my own lunch at home and my purse at home. I don't even have my keys to get into my office or to school, so now they got to go back home and they're even more late. So now they get to school, they're frustrated, they're going to need some support. And
Yes.
so the reality is our educators go through things too, and so that's the piece that we have to make sure that not only are we taking care of our kids, we are taking care of our educators. And
Yes.
that's the piece, and providing them with some self-care tips and some things like, some of these restorative practices, social emotional pieces for them. One of the teachers came, I saw several years ago. And one of the things she told me, she said, Dr. Mason, thank you. She said, because your push for mental health in education and combining and talking about where that intersection is has made a big difference. She practices mindfulness every morning with her kids when they come in, and that's a part of getting prepared. She said, and it's for me too. She said, and I tell my kids it's for me as well, because guess what, at the end of the day, I need to be able to focus and draw my attention onto what's happening right now, because all of the problems that exist in my life right now, they haven't changed because I walked through this door, but I still need to be here and be present with my kids. And that mindfulness allows her to be present in that moment to teach. So those
It's
types of
key.
things make a difference. Exactly.
It's key. I do that with my college classes. I do
Mhm.
house cleaning. I start with those emotional check-ins in the beginning of class. House cleaning to make sure we're all on the same page. Everybody knows when the next assignment to do, what the assignment is,
Mhm.
so that it takes out the ambiguity there, makes people feel more comfortable because they know what the expectation is. And then it's up to
Mhm.
them to then meet it. But we start that class. So if you miss the class, we're starting back with house cleaning and that emotional check-in. How are
Mhm.
you doing? What is going on in your life right now, so that they can, I do care. I don't just want your stuff. I don't want you to just turn your stuff in. I don't want you to just listen to me lecture. I do care.
Mhm.
This may not be the time, but there may be a different time, or there may be a different place, or I see that you're
Mhm.
doing something different. So I don't even think it stops just at middle school and high school and elementary school.
Mm-mm.
We
Mm-mm.
definitely need those same types of restorative practices even at our college campuses.
Mhm.
Absolutely, and that puts us in a place of lifting up climate and culture, as well as we're moving to the word of well-being, right? Because
Hmm.
self-care is, it makes people uneasy a little bit because they feel like they got to
They think
spend a
Mhm.
it's
bunch of money.
selfish. They
Right,
think it's
yeah, they think
selfish, but
it's
yeah.
selfish and you spend a lot of money to do it, but that well-being. And one of the things I jokingly said a few years ago, but I found it to be very helpful, and I ended up sharing it in reference to well-being and showing up for the kids. Because what I also learned is that students think of you as the best version of you every single day, right?
Mhm.
Even if all those things
Yeah.
happened before you got to work, when you walk through that door and you show up, they think you're the best thing happened. In fact, even though you walk through the door, they still think you slept there. They still think that's where you live and you
Right.
eat. Right?
Yeah. No
So
true understanding. Yes.
they're
Yes.
Mhm.
right, but in their mind, you're the best thing that happened. So one of the things I remember, it's not a why. I don't even ask teachers what's your why. I ask them to remember that teacher that was everything beyond just your teacher, right? So I decided that I would leave my nerve at home. Therefore, no one can get on it when I get there.
Oh. I'm gonna have to work on that. I'm gonna have to work on
I
that.
when
I
I
may
tell
not
you,
show people that they've gotten on my
oh
nerves,
no,
but they
I
Mhm.
may
tell
have.
kids be like, Miss
Listen.
Bradford, I know I'm getting on your nerve. No, baby, I didn't even come with one for you to get on. The
Who
week
Mm.
is
said?
good. What you got going on? And I had a teacher, and she was going off and da da da. And she said, Miss Bradford, I don't even understand how you just show up doing this and you deal with this and you do. I said, because I leave my nerve at home. I said, listen to me. Just try it. I said, you try to leave your nerve at the house tomorrow and then see me at the end of the day. I want you to know that teacher really said she left her. And when she came to me at the end of the day, she said, I want you to know I didn't really think it was gonna work. But because I really decided that my nerve was at the house, nobody got
Mhm.
on it today. I said,
Right.
I show up like this every day. I'm gonna
It's
come
Mhm.
in.
dangerous for me to show up like that. It's dangerous for me to show up like that. I need to care about a few things. If I'm
But
acting
this
like
is
nothing
it.
is a problem, you teach
This
people how to
and you
treat you.
do.
Yeah.
You do teach people how to treat you. You do have a standard. But what I'm saying is you listen better when you don't have a nerve. Why? Because
Mhm.
Yeah.
you're not tapped into your emotions.
Absolutely.
It's not about your mood. It's about sticking to the plan. And the plan
Mhm.
is for me to come in here and get these kids the best version of me. The plan is whoever is in need that I'm willing to meet that need. The plan is whatever teacher, whatever situation you
Mhm.
dealt with, I'm going to show up fully me in the best version of me. There's no emotions attached to it. I think sometimes we think you have to all the way care to be able to care, but I too much caring can lead you to a place where you're too emotional. You can't make no decisions for anybody, not even yourself. So when I still care so much, so I'm gonna listen intently. I'm gonna go ahead and summarize what you said. I'm gonna give you a solution to your problem. I'm gonna show up when you need me. And because no matter what, I done had kids cussing me out left, right, up, down. Oh, I've been
See,
in
no, 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 ma'am.
yeah,
Mm-mm.
but I've been in mental health for over 10 years. I've dealt with kids with all types of
Mhm.
diagnoses, parents with diagnoses. So when I tell you, all I got to do is show up with the knowledge and the skill that I have and the Holy Spirit that stand up in me every day.
Mhm.
I don't even
Mhm.
need to worry about that nerve. It could be at the house. I just need to come up here and show up for what you
You
expect.
compartmentalize well. You
I
Mhm.
compartmentalize very well.
and we have to, and that's the only way we can truly survive life. Because also, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to teach kids that we teach control what you control, and you draw the
Mhm.
circle, and the
Mm-hmm.
circle is what you control outside. So when I'm at work, despite all these things that Dr. Mason described happened before I got there, that's
Mhm.
outside the door. I
Mm-hmm.
can't fix none of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
Right.
let me only control what I can control. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
I can control sticking to the plan. I control
Mm-hmm.
my mood and I can control getting this job done. And then when I get back out there, now I can get to a place where I can deal
Mhm.
with that stuff. That's also not just compartmentalizing, but that's social emotional learning. Those are tools that you
Yes.
need. Making the
Mhm.
right decision. That's decision making, right? I made
And
the
Yes.
that's professionalism.
oh,
Right.
that's a whole nother show. There's
Right,
a
right.
whole
But
nother
but
table.
no, but
See,
even
that's
taking those things
professionalism.
home. But no, that's even involving the home because oftentimes we tend to take our problems from work home and our
Mm-hmm.
families sometimes get the brunt of our day.
Yes.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading a story years ago, um, and it was called The Trouble Tree. And every day this gentleman would come home, he would touch this tree that was right outside of his house. And every morning he would get up, and when he'd leave for work, he touched the tree again. And so his son asked him, said, Dad, why you touch that tree every day? He said, because when I come home, I just hang my problems from work right here on this tree. He said, but when I head out in the morning, I pick them right back up. He said,
Yeah.
and that's so that I don't give all of that to you all. I want to give you all my best. He
Yeah.
said, and you all should not have to deal with the troubles of my day from work. And that works both ways. You know, when you come to the job, your job shouldn't get the problems you've had at home. And
Mm-hmm.
home shouldn't get the problems you've had at work. So
That's
you've
it.
got to learn, you know, how to touch that little trouble tree outside of your house and just leave it right there.
That's it. And that goes back to that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have
Mm-hmm.
that growth mindset in order to do any job, right? Not let
Mm-hmm.
alone just have implement restorative practices. Anything that you're willing to do, you have to be able to always be a student of life and understanding you have to make these decisions. Some decisions have to be split, but some of them you just need to leave right there until you finish doing the thing over here. And that's how you find a center. That's how you find a peace about
Mm-hmm.
it, about life and dealing with. And now, if you live with an educator, put a timer on, okay? You put a timer
Say
on.
that a little louder for my wife. Say that a
Mm-hmm.
little louder for her. Put a timer on her.
Educator, because yes, my husband is so when you live with an educator, we have committed that there is a timer, and that timer is you or whatever you get to talk about. You will say you have to put it on the table, right? Restorative
Mm-hmm.
conference. A restorative conference. And the
Uh-huh.
restorative conference is you can say, I want to talk about one or two problems, or I'm going to just talk about this one problem and I'm going to be done. And when that's
Mm-hmm.
done, now we can talk about everything else dinner, kids, whatever activities we got
Mm-hmm.
planned.
Mm-hmm.
But we have vowed that we will not allow it to consume our entire evening. Because if you do, everyone, one of the things I tell people, those people go about their business and
Mm-hmm.
they live their
Mm-hmm.
life. And you
That's
still
right.
up here worried about it. I'm
And
not gonna
mad.
do
And
it.
mad.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not
What
gonna
They
do
is
it.
have
that?
forgotten all about it. They don't remember any of the details, and you know all of them. You know
Yes.
all of
Mm-hmm.
them specifically. Yeah.
And that's how we move away from giving grace.
Mm-hmm.
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 We move away from that. But when you understand that that person and that problem or that situation is two separate things,
Mm-hmm.
then you can then you really walk in. Then you really changing your language because you understand just
Mm-hmm.
because the behavior you display, that doesn't mean who you are. That means that's the issue. So go ahead, let's get to the foundation and the true issue so that we can move forward and we can repair the harm that was done so we can keep
Mm-hmm.
building and strengthening our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes a big difference.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a big
If
difference.
everybody will tap in, if everybody will tap in. And you're right, you have to put a time limit when you're living with an educator. You also have to put a time limit when you're living with a counselor or psychologist, or, we're difficult people to live with too, you know,
I'm
because
not gonna
I'm an
co-sign that.
overthinker.
I'm not gonna co-sign that.
Yes.
My wife listens to the show,
To
so I'm
this
not gonna co-sign.
Yeah, yes, she does. Yes, she does. And she knows what I know. I part of it is accountability. Like I accept that and I receive that because as thinkers, as educators, as people who like to live and grow and learn, everybody doesn't always live and grow at the same pace. Everybody is
Mhm.
not always
Mhm.
interested in learning the same lessons at the same pace or analyzing it a certain way. We're researchers on this at this table, right? So we're going to
Mhm.
be thinking about how we can best the next time, or how we can make
Mhm.
those adjustments. And
Mhm.
sometimes people just want to be,
Yeah.
so it
Mhm.
is good to find that balance.
Absolutely. And you mentioned accountability. I'm also you have to teach kids accountability, but with
Mhm.
support.
Mhm.
You have to teach
Mhm.
adults accountability with support. I think
One
sometimes
more time for that. One more time for that. You got to teach.
account accountability with support.
Yes,
Mhm.
That means
adults
Mhm.
and kids.
adults
Mhm.
and kids need accountability with support. A lot of times we think because we told you, what you should be accountable for, this is what the next steps, you agree to it. But if there's no follow up, there's no
Mhm.
come behind to make sure that that was seen through, or you don't address those other challenges that person had, how can they grow? You left them in a stifled place. So you want to make
Mhm.
sure that you go, and that's all restorative work as well. So that's going
Mhm.
back and making sure that they have that support that they need and that you walk them into that next step. We all
Mhm.
need it. We all need it.
We
Mhm.
all need it.
Right. And sometimes, and I like the support piece, because oftentimes
Mhm.
people just speak on accountability, but the accountability with support, it really lets people know, hey, I'm going to work with you. I
Mhm.
understand you've done this or whatever, but guess what? I'm going to hold you accountable for your actions, but
Mhm.
this is how we're going to work towards making better choices. And
Yes.
all, and that's for adults and children, and
Mhm.
both need that support system in place. It's almost like, I use the example a while back, how your parents would give you a whooping and then say, now this is gonna hurt me as much as it hurts you, and it's like, no, it don't.
Oh.
But afterwards it was that conversation, and
Mhm.
I
We
remember
could have
as a
just
kid.
started.
Right. It's like I remember as a kid, I tell everybody I got a whooping every day, but I got a whooping for something new now. Trust me, okay?
Mhm.
I
You,
learned the lesson from the day before, but
right.
I got a whooping for something new
You
every
didn't
day.
generalize it to the next thing. You was like, no, we're gonna
No,
be very
Apply
specific.
something different.
no. I
Semantic here,
I
yes.
never knew how to go from the particular to the general. Okay,
Okay.
that was my logic class, Reverend Battle. If you're listening, I learned. All right, but I never knew that then. Okay, but
Hmm.
here's the gotcha. I think on those lessons that my father would talk to me about after, it wasn't that you just got a whooping, it was a conversation afterwards. It was that talk. Now oftentimes I would say, you could talk to me before the whipping and we ain't
You
got
hear
to
what I
have
said?
it.
We
You
can
know what I
start
mean?
there. We can start with the talking, and we
Right.
can end there too.
Right, but that whooping was that attention getter. You know what I'm saying? Let
Mm-mm.
me
Yes.
grab your attention so you understand. It's that shock value.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
shock value, but
Right.
Right,
But
but it was that
that's
that
important.
support. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that support made a difference. And like I said, now through fully cognitive developed eyes, I
Mhm.
can think back on some of those things and really um appreciate the lessons that were taught back then. It makes a
Absolutely.
those are
difference.
the ones that should be shared.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's the thing when you work with students today, that's what they want. That's what they want. They want
Mm-hmm.
to know that you care enough to come back and have the conversation, that you
Mm-hmm.
care enough that you're not holding my behavior against me. And for a lot of the sweet, sweet, I call them all of my sweet, sweet children, when I work with them, they know what they're going to get from me. They
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna come with the same energy to tell you if you did wrong, and I'm gonna bring the same energy to tell you if you did right. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the piece, but it's always followed up with a conversation. And some of them get to a point like, just no, no, I don't. You about to tell me a lot. You about to tell. I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but you know where we are. You know that this calls for a conversation. But the beautiful thing is, and one of the most rewarding things is after talking to a student, and if they find themselves in a situation, they can tell me, well, you did say I should do this, this, and this, right? Or I
Mm-hmm.
remember when you told me to try this, and I did. And whether that's in our school buildings or whether that's taking it back to their house, because I come from, I'm the first person in my family to go to college and to graduate.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. So I understand becoming more than your environment and then having to
Mm-hmm.
stand in that environment, understanding that you house more than what you're watching, but don't know where to turn and don't have anybody to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not sure how to put it and present it in a respectful manner. So I
Mm-hmm.
like, again, that's life skills, teaching kids not to just coexist and be respectful to our environments of the school building, but also be able to take that home and teach them and change their environment. Because and you're not always going to change the foundation. You're not always going to, you can't change your parents,
Mm-hmm.
but you can change the environment with your
How
language.
you
How
respond and how
you
you interact.
how
Mhm.
you respond, how you handle things. And that is, yes, it starts off a challenge, but when you have the necessary tools and the
Mm-hmm.
necessary and the confidence to do so, and you're reminded that you are a leader, even my little boys who like to lead groups to the wrong, I have to will them and say, listen, you're a leader. If you can get people to do wrong, I know you can get them to do right.
That part. That part.
I
That
know you
part.
can get I know you can get them to do right if you can get a
That's
group to
it.
do wrong.
That's
So
That's
perfect
it.
logic right
that
there.
Mm-hmm.
language, man. It's about
Mm-hmm.
how you are saying
It's
it, what
perspective.
Man, and changing it and changing their mindset, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have the battle as adults. We have a battle against the internet, the different social medias, how everything is quick, quick, quick. But my thing is about teaching kids how to think beyond what they see, how to see the bigger picture. That's one of the things we grew up with, right? Can you see the
Mm-hmm.
bigger picture?
Mhm.
Being able to see what is going to develop to versus, when you have something this close to your face, it's so close that
Immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
can't see it fully because it's too close. But when you
Mm-hmm.
back that thing up and you see the full picture, you understand that there is somewhere to go and somewhere greater than where you stand. So that is my goal in teaching students every single day. You can become more than your environment if you
Mm-hmm.
continue to listen to the right things and not hold on to the wrong things.
That sounds like a book to me.
You
More
hear
than
what
your
I'm saying?
environment.
She is,
I'm a,
she
I'm
really
a,
does.
I'm gonna just speak on that right now. I'm gonna just put that in the atmosphere. So when you walk
Yeah.
away from the table, you just go birth that thing for us,
Yes.
all
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yes. Okay. Listen, glory. I sure will. I
Yes.
sure will.
You
I appreciate it.
and before
Yes.
you get off, before we even end this conversation,
Mm.
you brought so much to the table. I'm full
Mm-hmm.
just from the food and from what you said. But
Mm-hmm.
we would be remiss if we didn't say where you came from. So share with the people.
Oh,
You went to college. You were the first one to go to college. But where are you from? We know
I
you're in Hampton now, but where are you from?
I am from Patterson with one T, New Jersey, up north.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm born and raised there. Went to public school number 12 from kindergarten to 8th grade. Went to high school at John F. Kennedy High School, excuse me. But Eastside High School was our rivals. If you ever watched Lean on
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
from
Joe Clark.
the,
Joe Clark.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, but I
There,
went to
East
John
Side.
F. Kennedy, that red and black. It's always nighttime where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And by way, I went to University of Delaware, where I earned a full scholarship as a Division I athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there for 2 years, and then
What did you play? You just said Division 1
I
athlete. You skipped right over
I
your sport.
I played basketball.
Okay.
Okay.
I played basketball, earned a scholarship, and then University of Delaware my first 2 years, and then I transferred to Wagner College, Staten Island, New York,
Mm,
where I met my husband, who is actually from here.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Heritage High School, graduated from there, and I met him at Wagner.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Mr. Lou Rafford. They
Mm-hmm.
are HSS over there in Newport News. So, and here I am. He called me at work. I love to tell our story. He called me at work. I was a receptionist. And he said, "Hey, what do you think about us getting married?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And then he was like, "Oh," I said, "but I'm gonna have to call you back because I got to check these people in." And then I called him and I called him back and he's like, "Okay, we're gonna do it in
she was
6 months."
compartmentalizing even then.
Right,
Yes.
right.
She was
Mm-hmm.
staying
So
present in the moment even
uh
then.
so and I love to tell people because you know what, your love story, your destiny, your path, your journey, it doesn't always have to come with all the bright lights and the flowers and the helicopters. But when you have somebody that's truly on your team and for you
Mm-hmm.
and willing to go to battle every single day, I'll take that any day over any of the other luxurious things. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, 13 years married this past August. We
Mm-hmm.
have beautiful girls. Yes, we don't have girls. We only have girls. But
Stay in
I
the
will.
moment. Stay in the moment.
Yes, ma'am. So, yes, he has some beautiful girls. And by the way, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, rest his soul, he actually went to HU. And his
Mm-hmm.
name is Llewellyn C. Radford
Mm-hmm.
Sr. And he also was a Q there. And my mother-in-law, who is Alexis Carter, who also went to HU. So they're
Mm-hmm.
rooting for their grandchildren to go to HU.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But definitely love the Pirates over there. So.
That's good. That's
and
good.
and we love you right back.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I tell you, we've had an awesome time right here at the table. Got a lot of great nuggets and some great information. So, Sharon Radford, thank you for taking time to sit with us today here at the table. Greatly
Thank you
appreciate.
all. Thank you
Well,
all.
well, I am Dr. Richard Mason.
I am Dr. Tamara Williams.
Join us right back here next week, WHOV 88.1 FM.
The essence of HU.
Keep your fork.
Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
Thank you for joining us at the table.
Tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for more delicious topical recipes for life on the Sunday Brunch.
On Smooth 88.1 WHOV.